Fair warning, if you're squeamish, look away, because this, my friends, is about to get ugly. Bryan Hayes and I are in vastly different worlds when it comes to today's discussion surrounding Connor McDavid and what we've just seen unfold in the Stanley Cup Final. Bryan Hayes, here's the big question of the day. The Stanley Cup Final, these playoffs in 2024 have had what effect on Connor McDavid?
Ultimately, it's going to be a negative effect because he didn't win. He didn't close in the end, Gino. And that's really what we're talking about here when you talk of a player in his category. One of the greats of all time. We know that's what he already is. We know that's where it's going. And when you get to the finish line and you wrap up your career, you look back on how many times did you win? And ultimately, he didn't win, and the Conn Smythe doesn't count. If anything, that's going to have a negative connotation when you look back on it, because it's going to say, wow, he was so great, and yet they couldn't close. The Oilers couldn't get it done. He's a great player. We knew that before the playoffs started. We knew it before the Cup Final started. When they were down 3-0, Connor McDavid was still the best player in the world. Fact of the matter is, Game 7, closeout time, he didn't show up the way he had to. He did not score any points. He did not score any goals, and they lost the game. And the fact is, if you finish second, hockey, football, baseball, basketball, golf, you fade into history. You don't remember how you lost. You just remember that you lost. Michael Jordan went 6-0 in the finals. That's what I believe his trump card is over LeBron James. If McDavid wanted to catch the all-time greats, I think it would have greatly helped his cause if he won the Stanley Cup, but he did not do that.
I can't believe you just said McDavid finished second. The Edmonton Oilers finished second. McDavid finished first. We all decided that McDavid was the most valuable Conn Smythe winner of the 2024 Stanley Cup playoffs. He was not just the best player in the game, the best player in the world, the best player in these playoffs in particular. He set all kinds of records. He set records for assists. His numbers only bettered by Wayne Gretzky, the greatest of all time. And that is not enough for you to say that Connor McDavid actually elevated and did not hurt his legacy in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He did not finish second. He finished first. The Oilers finished second, Hazer.
No, he didn't. Gino, that's not the way sports works. No one remembers that, the fact that you put up great points. Like I said, the fact of the matter is McDavid, we already knew what he had established before he just continued that throughout the playoffs. He's the best point producer of this generation. He's the Gretzky, the Lemieux of this generation. That's who he is. He's the best player. That wasn't going to change. If they got swept in the first round by LA, he'd still be the unanimous best player in the game and the best point producer. That was never going to change, regardless of what happened. All he did was solidify what we already knew. The only opportunity for something to change in terms of the legacy, we're talking big picture here. This isn't me slamming McDavid. The guy's the best player in the world. I can't say that enough. This is about you chasing Gretzky, chasing Lemieux, chasing Sid. You got to get Cups to do that. That's what gets you over the top. He had an opportunity last night. It's a team sport. How many points did he get last night, Gino? I didn't think he was overly dangerous. I think if Sid played like that in a Game 7, we would be critical. If Gretzky played like that in a Game 7, we would be critical. If Patrick Mahomes did that, if LeBron James did that, he's the best player in the world. He was not the best player on the ice last night. But that's just a fact, and he missed the opportunity to win a Stanley Cup.
He did not win the Stanley Cup. That's absolutely true. But it's not a missed opportunity. It's merely a stepping stone in establishing his legacy. Let me follow up on some of the names you talked about. You talked about Gretzky. The first time Wayne Gretzky got to the Stanley Cup Final, he got swept, won the Cup the next year. Crosby, first time to the Stanley Cup, lost in 6. Won the Cup the following year. Gordie Howe got swept in the first time he was in the Stanley Cup. 2 years later, he won the Stanley Cup. Steve Yzerman didn't win his first Cup until he was 29. 2 years later, he won his first of 3. So my point is this, Hayes. My point is he did not hurt his legacy by losing in the Stanley Cup Final. It was merely the next step in establishing his legacy. He proved he's the single greatest player in the game, performed at the absolute top of anybody who's in these playoffs, and this was merely a stepping stone adding to his legacy, not deterring from his legacy.
Well, he would have added significantly more based on your measures and your standards if he had have completed and won the Stanley Cup. And I get it. It's not an individual sport. We understand that. This is not the equivalent of McElroy. But it's not far off in terms of being expected to be great in the biggest moment, though, Gino. Like last night, I think you'd be the first to admit, Game 7, was that his best game? Do you think he was dominant in Game 7?
He wasn't
you answer
dominant,
that for me, because I don't think he was.
Okay, he was not dominant, but I will say this, and I know close, we don't want to talk about close. They came inches away on multiple occasions from tying the game. They came inches away from taking the lead early in the game at that point. So now if those go in, that all of a sudden Connor McDavid's legacy completely changes? Come on. We were inches away from him finishing the deal.
Gino, if you win the game, your legacy changes. I'm not saying he took a massive step back last night. Maybe he stayed exactly where he was. The point is, it was a missed opportunity on taking a major step forward. You called it a stepping stone. I don't see it that way. A stepping stone is completing the job and getting that first cup ring. Then he's in the club. And all those other players you referenced, that's valid. And listen, opinions are subject to change. Legacies are subject to change. This time next year, if Edmonton wins the Stanley Cup, then McDavid will have taken that massive step, and he will be in a different category. But until that happens, we have to live with reality. It's not, well, maybe that could have gone in. Maybe they could have beaten them. They didn't. They did not end up winning. So McDavid still is not a part of the Stanley Cup club. And a difference also between where he is right now and where I'd say Sid was and Gretzky. Like, those are the players in his category. Yeah. I love Steve Yzerman. He's an all-time great. McDavid's better than him, and he's further ahead in terms of what he represents. Sid did that, I believe, his third year in the league when he lost that first cup, and then he won in his fourth. Yeah. Gretzky, I believe, lost in his third or fourth and won in his fourth or fifth. We can confirm that, but it was very early in his career. This is McDavid's ninth season. Ninth season. Wayne
Steve
Gretzky
Yzerman
won his fourth and...
I'll make the comparison to Steve Yzerman.
Great. Okay, that was before the cap. Yeah. Detroit had the highest payroll in the league. They had, 15 Hall of Famers on that team?
Yeah.
We don't live in that reality anymore. It's a very different world. And again, Gretzky won his fourth and final cup, his ninth season in the league. McDavid just played his ninth. I'm not sitting here saying McDavid won't win one. I think he will. And I'm not here. We can all pump his tires all day. We don't have to. We all know we're not debating how great he is. He's a great, great player. We're talking about resume and legacy. And I don't see McDavid. I don't see this Oilers team turning into a dynasty. I don't see them winning 3 or 4 cups. So I think everyone counts. Everyone matters. And the fact is, they were down 3-0. If they completed the job last night, it would have been the most triumphant victory in sports history. And we'd be talking about McDavid as doing something out of this world. That got wasted last night because they didn't complete the job. So them pushing it to 7, that will fade into history. Him putting all those points up, it just becomes a stat on a board. We don't remember who finished second. It's the sad reality of sports, but that's why we play the game.
You say it damages his legacy. I say it's merely another building block in McDavid's legacy. McDavid is a far better player today than he was at the start of the playoffs. He is far more prepared to win than he was at the start of the season than he did at the start of these playoffs. And I, again, disagree with you. I think you've got the makings of a potential, not only a Connor McDavid legacy, but a dynasty for the Edmonton Oilers, because now people see what's going on in Edmonton. People want to be a part of that. The players who are currently here, Draisaitl and all, want to stay, want to stick around. The guys who are free agents suddenly are now much more attractive because this is their chance to win. I think this is the start of something great and merely another cog in McDavid's legacy. You've heard what Bryan Hayes thinks. You've heard what I think. It's time now to hear what you think. The comments are open. You can all tell Bryan Hayes how he's completely wrong and how I'm absolutely right about Connor McDavid. I look forward to your comments.